In the government's latest response,
you must stay at home.
Master of the house, doling out the charm.
It's very important that everyone
know that you are not alone.
G'day nerds. Let's talk about generations. Let's talk about what generations are, what they aren't, how they change over time, and how our perceptions of them change over time. So here's your vocabulary. If I can just get you to pause the video here and write these down, this will just give us something to refer back to as we move forward. Now here we have Malala. Malala is part of a younger generation, and one of the really interesting things about talking about generations is the way different generations talk about each other. For example, most people tend to think that their generation is the best generation. I'm a millennial. If I wasn't a teacher, I'd probably think we were the best generation. But I actually think we were the best generation until, say, Generation Z. Gen Z comes along. And that actually sort of kicks a lot of the things that I think are typical of millennials into overdrive for the next round. And that's pretty great. So here we have a bit of artwork that's talking about the different generations as of 2019. See, that's me with my generation. We all think it's the 1990s. Generations as of 2019 and sort of how old they are. For example, if you were born in 97 to 2012, which I imagine you probably are, you're Generation Z. If you're born from 1981 to 1996, that's me. You're a millennial, also known as Gen Y, although there's a bit of overlap between here and the Gen X's, whatever, it doesn't matter. Generation X, they were born in 1965 to 1980, and before that we have the boomers, or the baby boomers, and then we have the silent generation. Although, I think this silent generation is actually probably a bit more up for debate. I think you would have, say, the silent generation, and then maybe a bit later than that, the greatest generation, and then before that, the builders, they were called. So these are sociological generations. These are generations as defined by social scientists, right? So they're broken down and labeled the generations into various groups, and it's based on the social norms that they have shown to exhibit, and it's really, they use the years as a dividing thing, and the peak of where those social norms cluster around will be the very center. So people born right in the center of that. And that's an interesting thing. It's just done for classification. It's just done to make our life easier as social scientists. Subsequent or new generations often tend to question or attack the norms set by prior generations. And this is really common in OK Boomer. Now, I think OK Boomer is a really fun thing to say. I say it a lot. Please don't say it to me, because I'm not a boomer. That's rude. I don't want the comments to just fill up with OK Boomers, because I'll cry, like many of my millennial brothers and sisters. So we also have familial generations. So basically, in our line of descent from our ancestors, choose an ancestor as far back as you want, and every generation or every group of family members that sort of sits along that line there, like on each branch, layer of a family tree, that's considered a generation. So in Australia, Western Europe, and the USA, basically 25 years is the typical generation time, and it's getting bigger. It's getting a larger number. So basically, from when you're born, average you'll have babies. I think in Australia at the most 25.8 or 27 or so. It's somewhere around there. And that whole group, what we would consider a westernized society, tends to have a 25-year generation gap. And we can represent this with a family tree, right? So at the top here, we have the canopy, and that's where your oldest members are. And we can see how it sort of spreads out for a little bit, and that's where you've got all your cousins, all your parents and your uncles and aunties. And then down here you have your siblings, and your cousins. And that's sort of what we would consider the trunk. And each branch out tends to be a new generation. But not all boomers are created equal. So there is always diversity amongst the generations. Collections of generations, like they're made up of other social groups. So you've got groups of based on gender, ethnicity, ethical values, religious values, and so on. And this means that a generation will have a lot of diversity within that group. But what it also means is that we have individuals within that generation that are different. So a generation is just one generalization that allows us to talk about a group sociologically. They will change over time, our view of certain generations, and the properties of those generations. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments below, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.